I was thinking about how to be effective as an agent of change. And it occurs to me that if you want to harness a horse, you need to lead it by the nose. And I think it's the same with ourselves. It's the same with all of humanity. That, in a sense, we have a tendency to go where our desire and our passions lead us. So to be effective as an agent of change means being aware of this and being aware that very often the ways that society teaches us to proceed is really by harnessing the backside and attempting to lead from that. Now, if you go back to the analogy of a horse, you'll find that if you harness the horse's backside and attempt to lead it by that there will be a lot of kickback. There'll be a lot of kicking, there'll be a lot of turning of the neck, there'll be a certain amount of aggression because the horse instinctively knows where it wants to go and it wants to lead with its nose. And it's exactly the same with human beings. So therefore, the first thing we need to establish is not to cripple ourselves with limiting ideas that society gives us. Of course, society is structured in such a way that the leading by the backside is very much engendered in us through control, programs, if you like, religion, duty to society, all of these sorts of things. And so being aware of that is one of the first steps in being effective. I think the next step is to realise or to come into contact with your own feelings. What happens is, as we go through life, we have many feelings, some of which are very disturbing to us. There are what are known as the negative emotions: fear, anger, sexual desire, and very often we steer away from these. Even though these emotions might be leading us by the nose, we want to deny them. And I think the correct technique is to unravel the emotion, and it often feels as though it comes in the heart as a blockage, and it's almost like unwinding a ball of string. There. And you unwind the ball of string, and as you unwind it, you look and regard the emotions you have and lay them out in front of you, and they'll stretch in front of you and behind in a sort of karmic manner. And the technique, I think, is very much of acceptance and almost of blessing your feelings with a kind of unconditional love and accepting them, and also understanding that as you are in some ways a horse, that those feelings will underline the direction in which you want to go. Of course, as human beings, we can use our conscious brain then, once we're in a state of calmness and acceptance, to look and analyse and understand, and to go back in time, perhaps looking at the karmic connections with our feelings. And we can crystallise this feeling and actually use the feeling as a kind of catalyst for positive change and development. In doing this, we can then exercise our free will to make a choice in the realm of action, so that all the actions we take in the future can be with the understanding that we've gained from assessing the realm of our feelings and thoughts, and understanding the way in which those will affect our desire for action. I was actually clicked on a YouTube video by Mark Passio yesterday, and funnily enough, this was so similar. It was the esoteric meaning of the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, and a lot of the kind of ideas that I'm expressing here were expressed in that. And of course, Freemasonry can be used or interpreted in either a positive or a negative way, and he was very much talking about the positive path. In terms of understanding free will, I think that's very important, has been very important to me in learning how to be effective in change. And it's in many ways it's because society is geared in so many ways for us not to understand or appreciate the fact that we have free will and the ways in which we can exercise it. For instance, very simple things like the way that government is set up completely undermines our free will, insofar that government is a kind of compulsory institution, and if we don't subscribe to it or are not happy to give our taxes perhaps to something we consider to be somewhat fraudulent, then the government will override our free will by using force, if necessary up to lethal force if we resist arrest, in order to extract those taxes. That's just one example, but in every way the innate freedom and free will of the individual is very much undermined by the structures of society. So whilst some of us are becoming aware of the nature of our free will and how important it is, when we're dealing with relationships with others, perhaps others we've known a long time, those we have some responsibility to, they are often not at all aware of this. So they're operating at more of an unconscious level than a conscious level in terms of their actions and beliefs. And I think understanding the nature of freedom and free will has helped me in my relationships with others to be effective as well. Because I've realised that on the one hand I need compassion to understand that many others do not have the same, perhaps, insights as I do about things, but nonetheless to realise that the same principles apply, in that whatever desires and strong feelings a person has, they are in a sense led by the nose, so to speak, even though what they appear to be doing or saying may contradict that. Oh. So it's led me to have an understanding of the viewpoint of others, and also to realise that I need to respect their free will to make choices, even if those are choices that I think are negative for them. I can express my point of view, I can share unconditional love with them, But to actually try to manipulate or control them is actually a breach of free will. And of course, one of the things you realise is that in your life you often hold on to ideas of changing people or controlling them or manipulating them, because in that way it makes your life more acceptable if the other person is going more in the same direction that you want them to go in. And this is an important realization, because you realize that in certain circumstances, perhaps the energy you're putting into certain relationships is unfounded because it's based on incorrect principles, i.e. the principles of controlling others rather than accepting others. So I think being an effective agent of change is also about looking at the way in which you exercise your freedom and free will, and you do, if you like, what I call the freedom wiggle with others, which is about the awareness of your freedom and the awareness of their freedom. And in doing that, it enables you to become more effective in terms of putting your energy into relationships and projects and things where your energy is going to be most effectively used. And then thirdly, I just want to mention more about the intellectual understanding of free will, and also some of the other governing things that seem to be natural laws that govern our universe. And some of these I've been reading about in the Law of One. The Law of One basically states that we live in a universe that's governed by free will, and that also love is a primary force. And by love they mean creation, creativity, beauty, truth. And in many ways these things are actually related to free will. And they also talk about other basic things which are governing our universe. They talk about polarity and separation. And they say that these things, by the way, in the Law of One, it's supposed to be channeled by some beings called the Ra beings. They say that these things, separation and polarity, and also the veil, didn't exist many years ago, and that were then introduced. And polarity is basically to do with male and female, opposites, yin and yang, and also to do with the fact that free will choice enables us to polarize either towards good or towards evil. And the way that they view the world is basically that people's polarity is of extreme importance, and that by polarizing towards one way or another, if you like, one's path in life becomes quite distinct and quite distinctive from the other path in life. So if you go back to the analogy of the horse, if the horse is going along the track and at a certain point in its life there is a fork in the road, and it may need to choose at that point whether to take the positive path or the negative path. And the way that the Ra beings express these paths is they express the positive path as service to others and the negative path as service to self. This is slightly complicated because the Ra beings have a very strong belief or conviction, if you like, in the world or the universe as being one, and therefore on a higher level, if you like, polarity is resolved so that service to others is also service to self. So in other words, you serve yourself by serving others, and service to self is also service to others. In other words, you serve others by serving yourself. And another way of understanding this is that the service to others' path essentially is the path of freedom, and the service to self path essentially is the path of control. So I was thinking about myself, and first of all, I was quite disturbed by the idea that this polarity meant that great evil could exist in the world, and my initial feeling was one of discomfort and wanting to get rid of it. But then I felt that on some level, having this polarity at the moment might imply that freedom could exist, and freedom has become very important to me. So I kind of decided to live with that discomfiture, which I think is there for everybody really, and whether this is entirely channeled correctly from these beings, I don't know, but it's just one of those things, I think. For me personally, when I thought about polarity, there's absolutely no contest, because I have absolutely no interest whatsoever in living a life where I'm controlling others and separated from love. So my polarity is definitely service to others, and having become aware of that has actually been quite significant for me, because it's made me realise that by doing the techniques I talked about, first of all the technique with myself and my own feelings and my own dilemmas, and secondly assessing other people and the way in which the energy of my time and love can create a positive impact with others, and basically putting all these things together, if you like, in a great big pot, with the fact that in order to be effective, I basically need to express my polarity as service to others, and that by doing that in the most effective way, I will progress in the most dramatic manner. And obviously the progress I want is for suffering to become less in the world. And so really I feel it is very much like choosing a path and setting out on a path. And of course, so in a way, once you've chosen a path, every small decision in life is made easier and less complex, since in every situation one then needs to simply ask the question: if a given action serves the highest purpose, that of serving others through serving oneself? If the answer is yes, then the action is taken and we continue efficiently on the path that we've chosen, the service to others path. If the answer is no, this action isn't serving this highest purpose, then we will simply avoid this action, as we understand that taking this action will simply obscure our chosen path. And in this way, every time we lead from the nose.